Hi, we're Diamond and Silk, and we love the Naked Truth Report.
Warning, the following program has been rated T for truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Oh, we think you can. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report with your host, truth warrior and mythbuster Kathleen Wells. The place where we distinguish fact from fiction, where data is used to drive points home, and where Kathleen takes the position that Democrats and black politicians have destroyed black America. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report. Now, your host, Kathleen Wells.
Hi, Truth Warriors. Happy Memorial Day. It's me, Kathleen Wells, host of the Naked Truth Report. Thank you for joining me this Sunday. I appreciate it. And there's so much to talk about, as usual. Let's see. I took 2 courses last week, free online courses from Hillsdale College. One was Dante's Divine Comedy. I think it's excellent. That was the first time I examined that piece. I became familiar with that piece. I don't know world literature or I don't know literature at all, basically. So I was excited to take it. In fact, yesterday marked the 700 years since his death. Now, the thing that taking that course, I ordered the book, but I didn't have the book. The instructor goes over many passages in the book, the poem. It's a long, lengthy poem. It's structured into 3 parts, Inferno, Hell, Purgatory, and Paradise, yes. So let's see, what was I going to say? One of the things I thought about when I reflected on the piece is that, 700 years ago, they were going over the same thing we're experiencing today. Dante was concerned about the same things that we're talking about today. For instance, corrupt politicians that end up in purgatory. They were discussing the same things. So what does it tell you? That human nature remains a constant. I've gone over that before, right? So in fact, that's something that the founding fathers talked about. It remains consistent. And this is why the progressives, which have been changing our government, are the way our government functions for the last 120 years. This is why the progressives are actually regressive. Because they don't understand, they don't take into consideration human nature. They don't even discuss it. They talk about systems as opposed to talking about the nature of man and nature's gods. That's something that the founding fathers talk about. The nature of man and nature's God. Dante it's a brilliant piece. In fact, it's considered one of the best works of literature in the world. He is concerned. He was a politician, and he was banished from Florence. He was from Florence, and he was banished from Florence because there was conflict, or there was. It was like between Democrats and Republicans kind of thing. He was banished for being against the group that was in control, the ruling group that was in control at the time. So he was banished, exiled, I guess the word is. He was exiled out of Florence. He couldn't go back. And it took him 10 years to write. If he went back, he risked being burned to the stake. And it took him 10 years to write the comedy, the Divine Comedy. It's called a comedy, even though at the beginning it's dealing with hell and very, very dark subject matter. It's a comedy because it ends on a good note. He ends up going to paradise and glimpsing God, the glory of God. He has a glimpse of him. It's fantastic. I know. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the piece because it's quite famous. It is the famous literature, poem. It's a long poem. Some of the themes that he addressed was freedom. You see, freedom is we rarely talk about freedom. I think Mark Levin talks about freedom quite a bit, actually. But when the Democrats are talking about issues, they never talk about the freedom of the American people. The Constitution is concerned with securing the rights of the American people. That's the main issue that the Constitution is concerned with. That's the main issue that a Republican government is supposed to be concerned with, is securing the rights and protecting the freedoms and liberties of the citizens of the country, of America. Dante was also concerned with freedom, yes. Truth and freedom. There's certain themes that are pivotal to life and living, right? Truth and freedom are two of them, I believe. So the Democratic Party never discusses freedom of the American people or the security of the American people. And that goes into what I was talking about, how the progressives are regressive. So the other course I took last week was the presidency and the Constitution. One chapter, one lecture talked about how the president was now an administrative president, and they focused on Franklin FDR, yes. Then the next chapter talked about the imperial president, and they focused on Obama and, basically he focused on Obama, and he contrasted him with Nixon and Reagan. And the contrast was, this is the thing with progressives. When a president is espousing ideas that are progressive, that liberals are the ruling elite, namely the media and Congress, go along with, when they're advancing ideas like Obamacare that the progressives elite go along with, the media won't chastise him or they won't be critical. Congress will even let it go. They think that it's a good thing, that this is the way that the country should go. We should have Obamacare. It was okay that Obama invaded Libya. That wasn't an unconstitutional act. Immigration, even though the president is charged with executing the laws that the Congress passes, even though Obama drafted, DAPA and DAMA, what was DAPA? Was it DAPA? What is it called? DACA, DACA, and the other one for the parents. These acts were unconstitutional. But the media and the Congress, I guess Republicans in the Congress, some of them, didn't have a problem with it. They didn't have a problem with it. But and also the United States Supreme Court, you see, they're all sort of like in it together. They're hypocrites. They have a double standard. But when it's conservative ideas, and this particular lecture makes you rethink your ideas about Nixon, because we can now look back, or now we know what happened with Trump. Every little thing they criticized Trump on, right? And so with Nixon, you can see that possibly you have to rethink Watergate, because Nixon was trying to do things that maybe another president who was Obama or Kennedy or LBJ, if they were doing the same things, maybe they would have gotten away with it. There wouldn't have been such scrutiny as to his actions. But because Nixon was conservative, there was scrutiny in the Congress, there was scrutiny in the media, he was criticized for everything, and then we end up with Watergate, you see? So we know, and they did the same, and we know how that works now, because what? We see what the media and the Congress, they impeached Trump twice, for goodness sake, even once he got out of office, you see. So this is what has been happening. In fact, when I was doing the lecture on the administrative president, which was basically focused on FDR, initially the Supreme Court felt that FDR attempted to control prices and wages. There was a case on, I think it's called Schechter Poultry versus a state or something like that. And he was trying to control, the issue was about who sued? The poultry company was concerned that Jewish people who practiced kosher laws had to be able to choose. This was in 1930 something. Jewish folks who practiced kosher laws had to be able to choose their own chickens, you see. And so FDR was attempting to control prices and wages in the poultry industry. So this Schechter brought this suit, and initially, the Supreme Court said that the president could not regulate prices and wages. He could not do that. So then FDR threatened to pack the court. You see, you can intimidate the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's what they did with, you remember Chuck Schumer and something Chuck Schumer said about the U.S. Supreme Court when Kavanaugh and the woman, what's her name, Barrett, got on the Supreme Court, and he threatened them if they did something with Roe v. Wade or something like that. So FDR threatened to pack the Supreme Court. And then that's when the Supreme Court decided to start ruling differently on FDR's laws that he had put into place. Because he was threatened by the executive branch. He was threatened by FDR because the Supreme Court was threatened. So then they began to rule differently on his cases that were brought before them. So you see how the Supreme Court can be intimidated or threatened? And you see how the president, how it's all politics. It's all politics, and how human beings they cannot necessarily operate in the best form, that they don't necessarily have things ordered in the proper way. That's something that Dante talked about, how Dante was being instructed on how to have his passions and loves properly ordered. You see, those that were residing in Inferno, they didn't have their loves and their passions properly ordered. And then when he went up to the second level, which is what? Not Inferno, and then the Purgatory, yeah. Why was it on the tip of my tongue? I'm not looking at notes. I'm trying to remember the course. People at the second level were, and there were each level had like levels within that. So he descended into purgatory, and then he ascended up into purgatory. Yeah, purgatory. And at purgatory, there were certain levels, and there were 7. And I've talked about these 7 levels before. The 7 deadly sins, right? And then they have their corresponding virtues. So you see, the 7, these folks today act like, during the Trump administration, the 7, that's when the 7 deadly sins became to be operable. Well, Dante was talking about the 7 deadly sins 700 years ago. So we must be able to put things in perspective, proper perspective. It's about human nature. And this is why, even though we have Supreme Court justices who we believe are principled, we thought that Kavanaugh was principled. We think that Amy Coney Barrett is principled, right? We even thought that Justice, what's the Chief Justice? Roberts, right. We even thought that Roberts was principled, but we learned different because we don't know what other kind of influences are impacting on them. Even though they're Supreme Court justices, they're merely human, right? And they are susceptible to being influenced by other factors. So this is why I think that maybe we feel like we're living in this time. We're living now. And we feel like this is the worst time possible to be living politically. It's like, oh my God, this is unbearable. I cannot believe what we're going through. We're leaning towards, we're moving into socialism / communism. This is a bad thing. America is going to be lost if we don't get our elections together, if we don't get the COVID business together. Well, this is pretty bad, but I don't know. What do you think? I mean, what I'm saying is that when Dante was banished, exiled from the city where he was born, so obviously things were so bad. We're not being burned at the stake, are we? However, I hear that, violence in these cities has increased tremendously, and also critical race theory is now being exposed to the military. These are all bad things, but how bad are they? Well, I think they are pretty bad. Wouldn't you say? This COVID business is really bad. And in fact, I just read a piece that was written by, what is her name? Sherry Markson. She writes for The Australian. And what has come out now is this, that, yes, the China, let's see, it was it's definitive, definitely, the virus was released, man-made from Wuhan lab. No doubt about it. That is definite. And 5 years before, Chinese scientists in the military were talking about the possibility of a third world war and how not biological, but rather bioweapons, viruses would be weaponized and used against other countries. This is an interesting thing. And the other thing is how the media, particularly social media and media also legacy media, totally would call people, they would ban us if we brought up these issues about this being a man-made virus out of Wuhan lab, if we talked about the origins of the virus, if we talked about it being intentionally released by the Chinese to harm the American people or the world. We were called conspiracy theorists. We were called giving false and misleading information. In fact, it was Trump that initially raised this issue about how China had how the virus had been released from the Wuhan lab. And because Trump had said it, it was like, oh my God, he's a conspiracy theorist, he's a liar, this is a falsehood, it can't be true. And now we look later and look, it's coming out, right? And not only was the virus released from the Wuhan lab, this is the thing, Fauci, and this goes back to what the founding fathers were saying about the bias of those experts in the administrative state, those bureaucrats, because Fauci's in charge of the NIH, right? And he was, oh my God, Steve Bannon. You should check out what Steve Bannon says about Fauci. He has blood on his hands. Fauci did not a good thing when there was the AIDS and HIV. He made some faux pas there, right? So now we're learning that Fauci there was a pause on gain of function research because of the ethical notions about it, the ethical ideas. It wasn't particularly ethical to be involved in this kind of research where you can weaponize a virus, make it easily transferable from a animal to no, not that, but just make it more deadly, more lethal. So that rose ethical issues, and they put a pause on it. Well, somehow Fauci was able to restart that gain of function research under the Trump administration, and yet the higher-ups at the Trump administration didn't know. He used some low-level, this is what's being said in the article written by Sherry Markson, Markson, from The Australian. and she has a book, What Happened in Wuhan, that will be coming out in September. But she says that Dr. Fauci actually went to some low-level guy in the Trump administration, presumably, I don't know, some low-level guy. Was able to get the A-OK to continue the gain of function research and fund the Wuhan lab. So this is important. Now, this is the other thing I want to mention is that I think there was some Chinese guy that said, some Chinese official that said, oh, we were involved in some kind of competition with the United States and we won, that kind of thing. We won. So here's the data point that I want to mention. America's economy, now who do you think's economy grew in 2020? America's economy shrank 3.5% last year. The economies of Germany and Japan shrank almost 5%. France, Italy's, and India's economies all shrank over 8%. And the economy of the United Kingdom was down 10%. China's economy, on the other hand, grew 2.3% in 2020. And first quarter growth for 2021 in China set a new world record. It was up over 18.3%. So the COVID pandemic has been highly profitable for China, you see. I think, and the other thing is this, Trump had initiated a commission or an organization or a study rather of the origins of an investigation into the origins of COVID, coronavirus. As soon as Biden got into office, he stopped that, and he just recently started an investigation into the origins of COVID. And in this investigation, he is asking for the assistance of the WHO and China, you see. Yes, we are headed in the wrong direction. We are in trouble, folks, with this Biden administration. It's not a good thing. But let's put it in the context of 700 years ago and what Dante was going through in Italy. Is it as bad? What do you think? I'll pose that question. I'll pose that question to my listeners, to my truth warriors. Do you think does one always believe that they're living in the baddest time? Is this as bad? Is this what we're experiencing now with the pandemic and having to endure the Biden administration denying that the border is actually open? The border is open, but they keep denying it. In other words, they're lying to us. This is the thing that they say folks in communist nations, leaders, officials in communist nations do. They never say anything that has any reflection on reality. They lie to their citizens. That's just the way things are done. It's never the truth. So now we're in the grips of that. We're in the grips of being lied to as citizens. Biden, the guy who's in charge of the border, says, yes, the border is closed. Now, we know it's not, because we know that catch and release is no longer happening. We know that buses are taking children to other cities. We know that the housing facility where they were being housed in Texas was full of folks, full of illegal aliens. But the Biden administration is just lying to our face. So is this what we're experiencing? And everyone, when they're living through something, is this worse than the Great Depression? Is it worse than World War II? Is it worse than World War II? Do you think? Can you compare the two? Is it worse than what Dante experienced, to be exiled? It was so bad, his his rival in politics in Italy was so bad that he had to be exiled from Florence. So what do you think? Call in and tell me. This is the Naked Truth Report. There's my music. I'm your host, Kathleen Wells, and we'll be right back after the break.
I was a campaign manager 8 years ago. I know what a difference that kind of an effort and that kind of commitment makes. So I thank all of you, those of you who are here. Mayor Yorty has just sent me a message that we've been here too long already. So my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you.
The Robert Kennedy assassination doesn't get as much play as President Kennedy's, yet it is more complex, insidious than his brother's murder. Reading in the LAPD investigation files, particularly the autopsy report, a gun was pressed against the back of Senator Kennedy's suit coat and 2 bullets fired. Another contact wound, a bullet to the back of his head with a gun muzzle 1 inch behind the right ear. Yet, witness reports and testimony has Sirhan, the accused assassin, in front of Kennedy and a few feet away. Doesn't match. Carl Euchre, a hotel maitre d', was designated to lead Kennedy through the Ambassador Hotel the night of the Democratic primary election in California. Walking through the pantry, Kennedy stopped to shake hands. Carl looked across the room to his boss, Uno Timmonson, waiting at the exit door and signaling to Carl to hurry up. Carl took Kennedy's hand and resumed walking when a young man appeared before Carl, intent on approaching Kennedy. Carl thought he was going to try and shake Kennedy's hand and blocked the young man, pressing him against a warming table so Kennedy could pass by unmolested. The young man was Sirhan, who took out a gun and fired 2 shots around Carl, attempting to hit Kennedy. So it was with great anticipation that I was looking forward to interviewing Frank Burns Jr., a lawyer and friend of Robert Kennedy, who was in the pantry during the shooting. Mr. Burns worked for RFK when he was the Attorney General, and a Kennedy confidant was in the 5th floor suites with Kennedy waiting for the election results. He was on stage when Robert Kennedy gave his victory speech, his last speech. Mr. Burns told me he had just caught up with a senator in the pantry and was about to say, "Look, pal, you're going the wrong way. You're supposed to go the opposite direction," when the shots were fired. He rushed forward and tackled Sirhan by the waist. He told me they danced around for what seemed a long time before he could wrestle Sirhan onto a warming table. I asked Mr. Burns if he noticed anyone approaching Senator Kennedy from behind, just before the shots or during. An elephant could have been standing behind Bob. My concentration was on Sirhan. We reenacted the shooting with me standing in for RFK, and I noticed where Mr. Burns had been standing initially and what his movements were afterwards. Walking back towards me, his eyes blazing, he said, "Sirhan did not kill Bob." At the trial on the witness stand, no one, not the assistant DA nor the defense, questioned him about distance. It was only some time later when he learned of the details of the autopsy report, he realized Sirhan had not shot RFK. After all these years, still bitter and furious, his friend was murdered and the government got away with it. I'm Michael Calder, the author of JFK versus CIA, and how you think things are ain't necessarily so. If you want to know about the first coup, pick up my book, JFK versus CIA, available at barnesandnoble.com and at your independent bookstores.
Yes, buy the hard copy, RFK versus the CIA, JFK versus the CIA. So the political rivals for Dante banished him, exiled him from Florence. So that's like Trump. That's like Trump, the election being stolen from him, or him being impeached twice. His political rivals stole the election from him. Now in Dante, let's see, there were folks who were in the Inferno, they used rhetoric to counsel others, to persuade others. That makes me think of charlatans like preachers or like Al Sharpton using his rhetoric, or like Don Lemon saying that the Republican Party is anti-Semitic. He's using his platform, his rhetoric, his speech to persuade. So he should go to the inferno, no? And then on the purgatory level, we saw they said that people these were on purgatory level. These were folks who loved too strong, or didn't love enough, or loved wrong. Yes, loving too strong is like gluttony, loving food too much, or lust, loving passion, or sex too much. Yes, loving wrong is, I can't remember. Pride was the main one. That the corresponding virtue to pride is what? Humility. Yes. So let's take a phone call now from Linda in Burbank. Hi, Linda. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen. Have you heard of the website consumersresearch.org?
No.
This is a website to boycott woke products. What the website shows, I don't have a computer, but what I heard that they show is negative advertisements of, products that support, stuff that we're against. For example, products like Coca-Cola, Nike, and American Airlines.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Thanks for informing us. Okay, Joey in Orange County, welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen. I've never talked to you before, but I've been listening to you since they brought you on board, and you're a very interesting addition to KRLA.
Oh, thank you.
And I just wanted to tell you that you, in my humble opinion, you have really improved since you started. I guess not that you were bad, but any job is hard at the beginning. How long have you been there now?
Oh, I'm going into the 4th year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's staying power. That's great. I just wanted to tell you, you asked if we lived in worse times, and I remember the first line in A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a way we are there now. And my son told me today, he's in London at the moment with his fiance, but he told me that today is the anniversary of the burning at the stake of Joan of Arc, 14 something or other. And so, I prefer not being burned at the stake and being free to fight for my country to stay free.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a lot of freedom. If we don't watch it, I guess they say the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so if we if we fall asleep at the wheel, we the people, then we can lose it in a generation. So
exactly.
I'm glad you're there.
Mm-hmm.
I just love what you have to share because I didn't know anything about Dante, really, except that he wrote Dante, that there was Dante's Inferno. I never read it. So it's really nice that you share what you know.
Yeah, I recommend taking Hillsdale College. In fact, this was just released. This lecture series was just released this week, and it's Hillsdale's free online course. You can go online. I recommend it. It's taught by Professor Stephen Smith. It's very good. There are 10 lectures.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Hillsdale is wonderful. I would send my kid to Hillsdale.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat, except he's already graduated, so
right.
I can't do that. But yeah, Hillsdale is just a light in the darkness.
Exactly. I mean, they've been there since 1844 in Hillsdale, Michigan, and they're providing information I didn't get in school, you see. So I think that's...
Well, they don't take any government funds, so they have no obligation to the government whatsoever. And so they can, they're Christian people, and they just do a magnificent job educating the youth, without having to kowtow to being politically correct in all the areas that we're supposed to be politically correct in.
Yeah, and they're educating the old, me too, because I'm getting an education taking those courses, I'm telling you.
Yeah, we're both old, but you don't look old because this is the first time I saw your picture because I have you on my phone, And you're a good-looking woman.
Oh, thank you. Thank
I was
you.
going to say young lady, but now you told me you're old, so I can't call you a young lady anymore. But I'm not a young lady either, and I love getting old.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you letting me know I've improved. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, let's take a call now from Robert in. Hi, Robert in
Oh,
Woodland
how are
Hills.
you doing tonight? You're
Hi.
doing a great job. Let me just start out by saying that I
Well, I've
vote for you for
improved. I've
any
improved. I think I have. Yeah,
any
probably.
any office in California. I would vote for you. Here's my problem with the Republicans, and I am one. We did nothing in 2020 to stop the fraud in the red states, and the problem inherent, intrinsic in that is that we're going to go into 2022 thinking, oh, it'll go just fine because Biden is so left-wing with BLM and Antifa. Now, here's our problem. If we do not create a war chest to stop the fraud in those red states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, we're going to be facing the same problem down ticket as we did up ticket. And what we need to do is maybe have a rapid response team to voter fraud, get ahead of the game with declaratory orders that we get computers put in those states against the Dominion computers and the Smart Macs to have a double check of the vote tallies. And maybe legislation like $250,000 reward for the arrest and convictions of individuals that commit fraud in those states. The legislatures in those states are Republican, and they've let us down. Ronna McDaniel let us down. Mitt Romney let us down. Lynn Cheney. They're all acquiescing like rhinos to the left.
Oh, I agree with you. I think that they aren't, they don't have integrity, and this goes back to.
And Kathleen, you're great, but I'll tell you, if we can't stop this, I have a bumper sticker, love it or we'll leave it. Grab 23 states, we'll break away from this union, we'll have disunion, and we'll have the conservative states of the United States against the liberal states of the United States. I mean, there's a point at which you can't inculcate, indoctrinate these liberal Democrats to come over to our side, even if it affects their wallet. I mean, take a look at the price of gas. It's gone up $1.20 in 4 months. What will it be at the end of this year?
Yeah, I agree with you.
It'll be $3.60 a gallon more.
Right, I agree with you.
We'll be over $7, and then look at commodities. Look at eggs. Look at milk, bread, and let's take a look at what happens with the inflation with those items. This is the problem, and what we're doing. When I watch Newsmax and I watch Fox, I watch conservatives get on and talk about they're more like security guards observing and reporting what's happening. Well, look what's happening.
Oh, they're impotent. Well, they're impotent. I agree with that. I think that they've been impotent from day one. In fact, they were the Republican Party was impotent when there was 40 acres and a mule, and that's why we're in this trouble. Can you imagine how things would be different?
Absolutely right.
Yes, how things would be different. Wait, let me say it. How things would be different if Black Americans, because you see, Democrats use Black Americans to destroy and hate America and divide us, keep us divided. Can you imagine how things would be different if the freed slaves got the 40 acres and the mules? But no, the Republicans caved to the Democrats, and it's been the same tune ever since. And this has been the problem. So we have to go back to that. We cannot fix it. And also I want to say that, yes, things are bad. And in a generation, your kids may be living under Marxism, communism, if we don't fix it. That would be bad if America fell to communism.
Right. The problem, Kathleen, is this, that once you ratchet up in America, like you let people in, how are you ever with the ACLU going to throw them out? You'll be mean-spirited.
Right.
Deportation will be allowed. They'll be stopped. They'll have NBC, ABC, CBS, MSNBC on there with cameras. How can you do this? This is another mean-spirited thing. So once we allow things to occur, like creating an agency, there's never an agency, federal or state, that's created that goes away because it's not needed. They always find reason to fund it with more money the next fiscal year. So this is our problem. Once we ratchet up with this Marxism, there's no going back. This is the problem. And they know that. That's why they're racing to do this before the 22 election.
I agree with you. Okay, thanks, Robert. I'll take the next call. There are over 2,000 agencies and over 2,000 administrative agencies. Over the last 120 years, the progressive movement has established a centralized, modern administrative state. That's what we're up against. And this centralized, modern administrative state has all three powers: judicial, executive, and legislative power. That's a problem. Yes, if we go to communism, it will be good. We will want to be, I don't know. Let me take a call now from Angela. Hi, Angela. Welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
Regarding Dante, a little touching on it, it makes me think of what Jesus said. I don't think he was just talking to a crowd of people, I think. But he's saying something like, though you being evil know how to do good. And that's just touching a little on what you said in the Dante and talking about mankind and how we're good, but we do bad. And then there's some people that, you just don't want to talk about. But I was kind of going on this tangent where I thought about this COVID bill that Lindsey Graham and Chris Coons wanted to pass. It was getting rid of the wet markets. And then I called their offices and I said, the only people you're going to make mad with this are the hunters. And I said, you know where this virus came from. And I understand why you can't just come out and say it. Because if they did, do you want me to, I can go on. This was a bioweapon. Mm-hmm. And if they said it was a bioweapon, there's repercussions.
Yes.
For attacking a country.
Right. Exactly.
So I was just like, what is this joke of a wet farm, a wet market bill that you're coming out with when it didn't even come from there? That was just like so outrageous. It just drove me nuts.
Well, Dante put politicians in inferno, you see. So it's like, they haven't changed their stripes because they're human. It takes a certain personality that wants to be a politician. Do you see?
Yeah, egos.
It's the ego. I think it's the ego that wants to be in control and power and looked up to and that kind of thing. Oh, my God, Biden really has it. The idea of spending 47 years in D.C.
Oh, my gosh. I think he's just a sad person. He's probably fits in that book. Or the poem that you're reading.
Well, he would be in the inferno, him and Kamala. Because she's definitely like just an opportunity. They don't have the interest of the American people. And the founding fathers made it explicitly clear that the interest of the American people is number one. That's the only thing they should be concerned with. And yet politicians have devolved into being, and this was probably, the founding fathers read Dante, you see. So they knew that politicians had a tendency for these things. And this is why I say progressives are regressive, because they've just gone back to like a ruling elite, like a monarchy.
Yeah, well, regarding Kamala Harris that you just touched on that, remember putting her in charge of the border? I think she said this when she was running before any of the primaries started, that she would just let the border be open. And that's why she's not doing anything. She doesn't care.
No, they don't care.
And that's why she's in the inferno, too.
Yeah, she's in the inferno. I think all politicians are in the inferno.
Too bad.
Yeah, ideally you want to be in paradise, but at least purgatory, because at least you're making an effort.
Then there's somebody else who wrote a book called Paradise Lost. I haven't read that one. But.
Yeah, I think they have that course too. I think that's C.S. Lewis. I may be wrong. I don't know any literature, but I'm getting ready to know it because I'm going to take these courses.
I know.
The classic literature.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should know it.
Sharing.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Angela. Okay, Irvin in Long Beach. Hi, welcome to the Naked Truth Report.
Hi, Kathleen. Oh, I was talking to your screen. I had the hardest time trying to remember your name, but I listen to your show regularly. That's funny. But here's my question to you, Kathleen. You mentioned about the 40 acres and a mule. And I said, well, that would have been nice because we still complain about that. But we have this Tulsa, Oklahoma, that infamous incident that took place coming up this week, Monday or whatever day it is.
Yeah.
And my question to you, Kathleen, we would have gotten our 40 acres and a mule. That would have been good, a good gesture on the part of the government. But what about the racism part of it? It took decades, up till the civil rights movement for us to even get a sit at the table. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you know how well we did during segregation, don't you? We were business owners. We had 87% two-parent families. Okay?
Yes, we did well.
Yeah, we did quite well. So it's like integration. We now have only 25% two-parent families. We own businesses. We own bus stations. We own funeral parlors. We own banks. We own movie theaters. Now we own nothing. We can count on one hand, it's about economics. We need to stop focusing. Listen, humans are humans, okay? If you don't learn anything, human nature is human nature. So black folks need to get their act together economically. Stop focusing on the skin color and start focusing on the economics.
True that. It just seemed like we did well under adversity, but now that the door is opened up, or there's nothing barring us from the economic side of it. But Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons of the world.
They're the ones that use rhetoric, and they would be in. I think they would be in Inferno.
I agree.
Because they're using rhetoric to convince and persuade.
True.
Like preachers. And those, I think they were in Inferno. The only ones that were in purgatory were the 7 deadly sins. Those were folks who loved too much, loved too little, or loved wrong.
Well, you may disagree with this, Kathleen, but I think that's what's happened to us as black people. We're enjoying ourselves too much, and we got to fight. We're letting these guys in the Inferno take us down that wrong path.
No, I mean, we don't, we're not educated. They're not educated. Because I try to have a conversation with younger women on YouTube or whatever, and they don't, all they can talk about is racism, white supremacy. They can't talk about anything else. They definitely can't talk about Dante. Anyway, this is the Naked Truth Report. Thank you, Joy Irving, for calling in. They're not educated. They don't know anything. And now they're going to be teaching critical race theory in the schools. Can you imagine? Talking about how slavery started in 1619. I don't know. There were free blacks in the 1600s. Okay, that was the Naked Truth Report. Me, Kathleen Wells. I'll be back next week. Thanks.